Episode 1 of 19. You're not evolving, you are rebranding. The ego's favorite trick is a makeover with better vocabulary. What if your healing era is just ego with better fonts? In this episode, we call out the spiritual rebrand hustle and what it actually means to evolve without needing an audience. And yes, I get the irony here. If you're feeling more authentic than ever, but still subtly hollow, this one's for you. This isn't about calling you out. It's about calling out what's been pretending to be your evolution. You've cleaned up your habits. You speak with better language. You don't rage out, you regulate. You post growth mindset quotes instead of vague book rage. You meditate, journal, reflect, even do shadow work. But beneath it, you're still chasing validation. You've just updated the branding. Real evolution isn't aesthetic. Real evolution is annihilation. It's losing things you thought you were. If your growth feels polished, comfortable, or strategically visible, it's not growth. It's your ego in a new outfit. This isn't about guilt tripping you. It's about helping you notice what still needs to die. Not to become better, but to stop being counterfeit. If this stings, let it. It's supposed to. The wound is where the costume clings tightest. And sometimes the only way to grow is to let your old self burn without a farewell post. Section 1, the rebrand begins subtly. It always starts in language. You stop saying, "I'm broken," and start saying, "I'm integrating." You don't lash out anymore, you process. You don't cry for help, you share your truth. It sounds like evolution, but something still smells like ego. The truth is, the ego doesn't mind change. The ego loves change, as long as it's the one directing it. So it trades in the tantrums for TikToks, swaps out "I'm too much" for "I just have high standards." It learns the right words, authentic, sovereign, intentional, and starts wearing them like designer labels. But it's the same ghost underneath all the Gucci. Let's get specific. Authenticity becomes a pass to trauma dump without consent. High standards just means you're still running the same control loops, but with cleaner branding. Healing content becomes a curated feed of aesthetic ego, ring lights, mood boards, and recycled rummy. This is not a call-out. This is a mirror. And if it makes you flinch, good. That's the part of you still playing dress-up. Section 2, the Mechanics of Ego Rebranding. Here's the con. We change the look of our behavior and call it growth. But if it still feeds the same emptiness, it's just repackaged addiction. You regulate now instead of explode. You journal now instead of spiral. You say, "I'm setting boundaries" instead of "I'm cutting people off." Sure, better optics. Cool. But here's the deeper cut. Would you still do it if no one ever knew? No story to post, no validation hit, no applause for being so self-aware. Because real transformation isn't for sale. It's not marketable. And it sure as hell isn't photogenic. It's pretty ugly, actually. You can't growth hack your way into actual change. Behavioral upgrades are nice, but they don't mean shit if the structure of your identity is still built on being seen. The ego's favorite trick? Become the coach, the healer, the woke one. That way, the ego never has to actually die. Just evolve into your own personal brand. Section 3, the signs you're just rebranding. Let's tell the truth here. A lot of quote-unquote growth, it's just ego with a cleaner user interface. You still need to signal depth to feel like you matter. You still narrate your evolution because silence feels like invisibility. You can't rest unless someone sees your healing. If there's no witness, you wonder if the work even counted. You say you're different now, but the difference is mostly that you can name your triggers in a thread. You've learned the script. You've learned the aesthetic. You've stopped doing old patterns, but you haven't stopped being them. You still use people as mirrors for your clarity. You still feel superior when standing next to someone who hasn't read the same books. That's not growth. That's performance. Real embodiment doesn't need a caption. It doesn't flinch when unseen. Actual evolution, it doesn't feel good. It feels like deletion. It's lonely, disorienting, embarrassing. It's not glamorous. It's not a comeback story. It's a disassembly. You stop labeling your phases. You stop announcing the healing. You no longer need to tell anyone what you've let go of, because it's already out of your hands. You outgrow your tools instead of building your personality around them. You realize the journal didn't fix you. The breathwork didn't save you. They just gave you a quiet room long enough to hear the truth. And the truth is, there is no final form, just fewer illusions, just cleaner action, fewer words, less noise, more signal. There's a difference between having an ego and letting it drive. You can let it ride in the passenger seat. Hell, it can even DJ sometimes. But if it's steering the wheel, you're just headed toward a prettier version of the exact same crash. And you'll just keep crashing. They trade in the angry identity for the enlightened one because it gets better feedback. But evolution isn't optics, and the ego, it loves a good costume. Let's name them. The angry, scared little girl. She says she's in her divine feminine, but what she really means is she wants to be worshipped without responsibility. She calls it intuition, but it's just avoidance with better lighting. She punishes honesty with cold silence and rewards codependence with praise. You never really know what she wants, because neither does she. But she'll tell you you're toxic for not figuring it out. Next, we have the empowered boss babe. She calls herself alpha. She thinks softness is weakness. She speaks in ultimatums, confuses being feared with being respected, and hides exhaustion behind a curated feed of coffee, contracts, and grindset quotes. She didn't heal, she just monetized her rage. Next, we have the sacred masculine mentor. He holds space, but only if you admire him. He'll listen until you disagree. He preaches presence, but disassociates when he's challenged. He says he's in his king energy, but what he really wants is to never feel small again. He doesn't love, he recruits. Next up, we have the nice guy turned nihilist. He tries to be good. He tries to be patient. But the world didn't give him what he felt owed. So now he calls himself a realist. He mocks emotional language, laughs at intimacy, and wears cynicism like armor. He's not healed, he's just bitter and better at hiding it. Next, we have the high standard avoidant. They don't date, they vibrate higher. They keep a running list of red flags so no one ever gets close. They're not unavailable, they're just always working on themselves. They weaponize healing language to justify ghosting, and think having no needs makes them evolved. It doesn't, it just makes them alone. Next, we have the spiritual bypasser. These people are always calm, always wise, but only because they've numbed the rage. They won't get angry, they'll observe the trigger. They won't hold you accountable, they'll send you love and light. And they'll leave, quietly and passive-aggressively, when intimacy threatens their image. Next up, we have the content healer. They don't heal anymore. They produce healing. Every insight becomes a post. Every tear is staged with ring lighting. They can't grieve without a camera rolling. They call it service, but really it's strategy. Their growth never gets messy because mess doesn't convert. They don't need transformation, they need engagement. Next, we have the eternal victim. For these people, everything is a trauma response. Everything is someone else's fault. They've built an identity around being misunderstood, rejected, oppressed. They don't want repair, they want recognition. They say, hold space, but they mean, agree with me or else. You can't challenge them because to them, everything is violence. Next, we have the conscious poly bypasser. These people say it's about love without ownership, but it's really to them about avoiding depth. They call themselves ethically non-monogamous, but leave a trail of emotional debt. They use theory to bypass responsibility, boundaries to dodge intimacy, and freedom as an excuse to never be acceptable for impact. They've read the book More Than Two, but never even reread their own patterns. Next, we have the somatic gatekeeper. They've done 3 bodywork trainings and now speak in full body size. They think your discomfort is resistance. They treat intuition like law. They'll call you stuck in your head if you dare ask for evidence. They don't want dialogue, they want dominance wrapped in nervous system vocabulary. Touch is their tool and also their weapon. Next up, we have the boundaries maximalist. To these people, everything is a boundary. Silence is a boundary. Rejection is a boundary. Withholding is a boundary. You never really know what's authentic or what's avoidance because they've learned to label their every exit as self-protection. They don't want relationships. They want insulation. Next up, we have the shadow work exhibitionist. These people talk about their demons like they're trading cards. They perform their pain as proof of depth. They say they're doing the work, but really they're just romanticizing dysfunction. If they ever lost the struggle, they'd lose their identity. Healing for them isn't the goal, narrative is. And finally, we have the chronically too much mystic. These people rebranded hypersensitivity as spiritual superiority. They say you can't handle their bigness, but really, they can't regulate their nervous system. They read your energy, but ignore your words. Every emotion is sacred until yours triggers theirs. They're not too much. They're just unchecked. These are all the ghosts still haunting the healing spaces. And here's the thing most people forget. These archetypes, they're not demons. They're not villains. They're just wounded identities that got smart. They found the language of growth and turned it into a shield. But the real truth? Most people who fall into these patterns aren't bad people. They're just undersupported. They're doing the best they can with whatever mirror they've got. And if that mirror is just Instagram comments and a broken upbringing, then the ego's gonna build itself around survival, not sovereignty. It's almost inevitable. So let's name it straight. Without a tribe that lovingly calls your bullshit, you will eventually start believing your own. Especially if you're intelligent, especially if you're eloquent, especially if you're hurting, yet still want to help. Because the more articulate your pain becomes, the more tempting it is to spiritualize it instead of dismantling it. And I'll be honest, I could have been the sacred masculine healer. I had the voice, the story, the ache, and just enough internal frustration and rage to rebrand as fire. But instead of doubling down on my own myth, I invited destruction. I let people tell me things I didn't want to hear. I stayed interruptible. And that's the only way through. If you're one of the people who only trusts lived experience, there you go. I'm not talking out of my ass. I've had to rip off the costume too. So remember, these aren't demons, they're not villains. They're survival strategies that got sophisticated and then got addicted to applause. They learned the language of growth and then weaponized it to protect the very self they claimed they'd outgrown. But here's the thing. Costumes can't evolve. They can only be replaced. Do you want to evolve? Then you have to strip the costume and the identity that chose it. But evolution, it's not about becoming a higher self. It's about shedding the selves that were never yours to begin with. That's why it hurts, sometimes more than you thought it would. You have to let parts of your identity die without rushing to replace them. You have to stand in the silence between who you were and who you haven't decided to be yet. No rush to brand it, no urge to explain it, just stillness. Real growth is when you don't need to document your growth. It's when you stop convincing others you've changed, because you no longer need convincing. So stop asking, am I evolving? And start asking, what part of me still needs an audience to feel real? That's where the real work lives. Not in the glow of your progress post, not in the curated calm of your Instagram story, not in the elegant way you now say what used to be a scream. It lives in the part of you that's still terrified of being unseen. That's the part that needs the fire, and no one is supposed to clap for it. Let it burn, quietly, completely, without a farewell post.